All right, good evening, everyone. Dr. Jonathan Shepard here, coming with another episode of Ask the Doctors through Hope Health Systems on a Friday evening. Today is Friday the 13th. Yeah, Friday the 13th, November 13th, 2020. It is so good to see all of you all out there today. It's good to be with you all, and I'm so glad that you joined us. I'm so glad for those who will go back and listen to this broadcast after we're finished today. And thank you for doing that. That means that you are a loyal listener, and it is so appreciative for you to do that. And yes, thank you. Thank you. Come on in the room, and I appreciate you sharing this message. Yep. So, as we are joining today, I want to come on and just bring in some news. If you have not heard, the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is surging. We actually have experienced the worst month since the pandemic started. I want to say that again. November 2020, thus far, will go down as the worst month of this pandemic. Here in Maryland, since November 3rd, 10 straight days, we have had more than 1,000 cases per day. And we had not seen that since back in April, May. And we are averaging about 900 some hospitalizations right now. What I am saying to you is that we have to remain vigilant. This coronavirus, I know we're weary. I know you're tired. I'm tired. But I have to let you all know, I don't want to see any more persons die unnecessarily. And so, with that said, we need to remain vigilant. Holidays are coming. And yes, we're going to do a couple of holiday shows, but this is the time now where you need to be planning. If you're planning to go back home to see your grandmother, your grandfather, your parents, your siblings, you need to strategize. You need to, number one, go get a COVID-19 test, know your status. Number two, if you're going to be around family gatherings or be in a family gathering, you need to quarantine yourself for at least 14 days to make sure you're safe. We don't want to bring the coronavirus home with us as part of the Thanksgiving meal. Yeah, I mean, we can leave that part out. So I want to let you all know I am concerned about you. I am concerned about what you need to do to stay safe. If you have not gotten a flu vaccine, please get a flu vaccine. It is imperative that you get a flu vaccine this year. And so, with all that said today, I had to come on just again to reiterate what is needed to stay safe during this time. So, with that said, I'm ready to shift on to our topic for today. I am so excited. I mean, I have an expert panel here that is like second to none. I hope I get a word in because once they come on, I don't know where I'm going to fit into this. But today, I have three of my friends, and I can actually say they are friends of mine in their own right and experts in their own right also in what we're going to talk about. So the subject is keep it open or keep it closed, the performance review for the virtual classroom. And so with so much that has been going on with the surges that are going on, we need to hear from people who are working with our children, who are working with our parents on how to maintain safety within the classroom if the classroom is open, and how to keep them engaged in the virtual classroom. So, all right, I want to bring on some of our guests one by one. So I'm going to start with Principal Nicholas C. South. How
Good
you doing, sir?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking, and
Thank
so
you.
glad that you joined us today. And just tell us real quickly what your role is and what your position is in education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Shepard. Good evening to everyone. I'm Nick South, and I have the privilege to serve in the Harperwood School District here in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. My background is about 20 years in public school education. I started off as a classroom teacher for nearly 10 years and then matriculated to become an elementary school principal, middle school principal, high school principal, and assistant superintendent of schools. I'm currently a central office administrator and supervise academics for our middle school and high school programs. And specifically, I oversee our international baccalaureate programs, which is an award-winning, world-class specialized curriculum for our students above and beyond honors. So I'm excited to be here tonight to share with you and with our other panelists. Thank you so much for the privilege and opportunity.
Absolutely. Woo! All right, man, he's awesome. Next up is Principal McKenna Lewis. How are you, McKenna?
Good evening, everyone. I'm wonderful. Great to be here with you all. That's a hard act to follow there. Pretty impressive resume.
I know.
I'm just me, proud and lead learner at a wonderful school in Prince George's County, Maryland, where many of the things you're speaking of are going on. My background, actually, I am an alternatively certified educator. This is my calling, however. I enjoy the teaching and learning process. I started as an elementary school teacher. I became a middle school mathematics educator. I'm also certified in special education, which I spent a lot of my career advocating and supporting students with special needs. I also now, again, I'm a principal in a school that is very diverse. I have 2 special education programs housed in my building, as well as a comprehensive elementary school and a pre-K program. So I have a lot of perspective based on the various populations that I serve, and I serve them. So I am a proud servant, leader, and champion for students. So thank you for having me.
Wow, man, y'all don't leave anything else for anybody else to say. If you have
directions, right? A good leader can also follow.
Now, if you're a parent, you would want to have Principal Lewis. You would want to have Principal South, or Educator South, or Administrator South. Maybe that's a better term. You would want to have them. And so now my friend is coming up, who is in the role of parent today. Yes, she is so excited to be in this role of parent. And I'm so glad that she is here. Dr. Lakita Carter, she's been on the show before. And come on, Lakita, just introduce yourself and say hello to everyone.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shepard, for having me, and thank you to Hope Health Systems for having me. I'm Dr. Lakita Carter, and I am, by day, I'm a psychologist, but all 24 hours of the day, I am wife and mom to 4 beautiful children. We have 3 boys and 1 girl who range from 2 to 11. Wow. So we have 2 children who are school-age children and 2 children who are toddlers. One just got out of diapers, and one is trying to claim her independence from diapers. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm usually working with Dr. Shepard in very professional capacities as presenting on talk shows and radio show, all of that, as we work together on the board of the Black Mental Health Alliance. But I'm thrilled today to not be here in a professional capacity, but to just be here as a mom.
Absolutely. And we are so glad you are here. So look at this panel. This is absolute perfection here. And so we're going to jump right on in. And we're just going to start with just some simple questions. And again, we're going to just go, with the flow of conversation. The first question that I asked our panel to consider was, give your observations about the mental well-being and status of the students, families, and teachers within your current school system. And I asked that question because all of us have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm so glad we have Nick there in Michigan, McKenna and Prince George's County of Maryland, and Lakita here in Baltimore County of Maryland. I think you're Baltimore County, right? And so it's a wide range of people, different populations. So I want to hear, how are the people doing that you are working with in the families? So let's start out, Administrator South. Why don't you start leading us out?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Shepherd. I will say, I think that you teach what you know, you reproduce who you are. So I'm going to be very transparent tonight. In looking at the impact of COVID-19, as you know, as you said, we're personal friends. The state of Michigan has experienced a multiplicity of changes in response to COVID-19, from our governor's decisions causing her to be the target of a potential kidnapping plot, to the president of the United States, very public disdain for her leadership decisions. But the COVID-19 pandemic isn't just on a world platform, it's in a very private engagement for us, me personally, and as a professional educator. Since the start of the pandemic, I know just by watching statistics and being actively engaged, we've seen a 44% increase in children being required to visit the ER or receive mental health support since the beginning of the pandemic. In my own district, 1 in 3 high schoolers has reported being sad or experiencing depression and thoughts of suicide. And so adolescents, as we know, depend on friendships to establish and to determine their self-worth and to manage anxiety. And so when we talk about what have we observed, those are some of the key things that I have seen as a building administrator, as a central office administrator throughout the district, is that not only is COVID-19 on the rise, the impact of COVID-19 is on the rise. We were raised in a different generation. And I think that sometimes our abilities to cope and coping mechanisms, they came from that rich heritage that we enjoy. But we have a generation that we're servicing that isn't always given those tools, those internal mechanisms to manage stress. And so it's manifesting in many different ways.
Wow, that's troublesome, what you just stated. McKenna, what are you seeing? Principal Lewis.
So I am an educator, and of course, human growth and development is part of what I do. I understand very deeply, but I'm quickly learning to support and help people manage mental health crises, as well as identifying resource. Different from Administrator South, my students are younger, and so they don't always have the language to be able to express feelings of sadness, feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression, nor, to be very frank with you, do I feel like as an administrator or even as teachers, we have the tools to be able to do some of that work as well. I am a true proponent of having mental health professionals in schools, and I advocate for having school psychologists in buildings, as well as professional school counselors, because that work is so important. And our children do need to know how to navigate. But my work really at this time is more with families. And so I'm finding myself partnering with outside community agencies, as well as working with families to identify supports. And to be very honest with you, I work in a community where we have a lot of newcomers to the country. So in addition to navigating COVID-19 and the economic fallout as a result of that, we have children who are and families who are just navigating what does school look like in America. I also, because I have and serve families of students with severe cognitive disabilities, that creates a different level of stress for caregivers. And it's difficult to find support when you have a child with significant needs in terms of behavior and cognition. So lots of stress, lots of economic distress, And a lot of things really, the issues that our families face are just magnified as a result of the current climate as it relates to COVID-19. But I also want to just focus on the fact that our teachers are equally struggling. Many of my teachers are also parents. So again, I'm teaching online. I want to give my best. I have an amazing staff. This literally is the best staff I've ever worked with. But even when giving their all, they feel defeated. They're not getting the same result as if they would in a community and classroom community and in the building. But they're also parents who are facing the exact same struggles that the families are. So it's just a lot. It's a lot to manage as a leader, but that's part of leadership, being sensitive to the needs of the people that you support.
Dr. Carter, what are you seeing?
So as a community member, I'm seeing a lot of what both of the administrators and school leaders have said here as a community member: high stress. And as a psychologist, I'm seeing high stress. I'm seeing parents who are trying to navigate having non-school age children at home, younger than school age. So they're navigating that. Plus they have children that are school age. So they're trying to help with homework. They're trying to put the kids down for a nap. I've seen this particularly with teachers, high stress, because as Principal Lewis said, they have their own families and they weren't anticipating working from home and teaching from home while at the same time trying to teach their child. I also see this at the college level. Students, I have a colleague who has 5 college students at home. They would have all been out of the house. All 5 of them are at home. The Wi-Fi is scarce because there are 7 people including the 2 parents who are working from home, trying to use the Wi-Fi. And on top of that, my biggest concern was a concern for my kids, is the lack of social development. Kids, we all learn a lot from working in a community. When you work in a community, you can test out behaviors, you can test out responses, you can negotiate, you can learn to bargain with people and negotiate what you need. And those things are being missed by virtue of just not having the same amount of social contact. So it's something that as a parent, I've constantly worked to try to build, Zoom dates with kids, because otherwise my kids will be on a couch playing Roblox all day, and the only conversation they will have is how to trade these unique animals. I don't know. I don't understand the Roblox thing, but they're trying to trade these unique animals, and that's literally the only conversation they have. So yeah, high stress. I have very close friends who are principals, Principal Linda Jones in Montgomery County, Principal Kevin Jennings in Baltimore County, and Principal Ron Wooden in Baltimore County. And all of them are saying, I am doing everything I can to get my teachers the resources that they need to be doing their job. And teachers have mental health issues too. So that's something that we have to think about, that this is high stress for everybody.
Absolutely. So, and it's just amazing how we've gone back and forth. Did you want to say something, Sal?
I wanted to, Dr. Carter struck a chord when she talked about teachers have high stress, and while we're not in the classroom anymore, as Principal Lewis said, we're the teacher's teacher. And so by example, if we're not careful, we will perpetuate some things that can unknowingly add to that stress factor. Leading a building during normalcy versus leading during a pandemic and epidemic are not the same thing. I said at the onset how intense the pandemic has been. I think in the months of March, April, May, and June, I personally knew someone that died every single day. Every day. Some days, 2 and 3 people a day. And I'm not talking about distant, just somebody I happen to see on Facebook. I mean, someone I was intimately connected with, to family member. And so I remember one day specifically, I called, this just talks about social currency. When Dr. Carter was talking, it made me really think about community currency, how we bargain and barter with each other through relationships. And so I remember one of my administrators was tragically killed during the pandemic. And I was driving my car and I had to pull over to the side of the road. And I called my school psychiatrist and said, I need you to help me. Because trying to process, I think that week we had lost 3 or 4 people very close to me personally, family members, and then to lose a staff member, it kind of just got me right to the edge. And I wanted to be very sure that as a leader, that I was not contributing to stress level or to anxiety or to paranoia, because one of the things that is most critical in this time is elements of stability. There are so many things, nothing is the same. And so if I as an individual can be a source of stability and normalcy, I need to try to maintain that as much as possible in my engagement, in my disposition, in my attitude, in how I engage my staff and students. And so that was very important for me. But Dr. Shepherd is my friend, and he said something in a conversation that there are times where the person that people come to talk to needs someone to go and talk to. And I think knowing that intrinsically is very important for leadership, even during this time, and even more so because we're responsible for the climate and culture of the buildings that we lead.
Wow. Oh, that's powerful. Thank you. So help us, because now we have parents who are out there listening. And so how do we, who are parents, how do we recognize when the teacher is suffering, and vice versa? How does the teacher recognize when the family is suffering? So help me out, Principal Lewis, because I mean, man, you all just hit a chord with me. That really hit hard.
So one of the things that I've said to multiple groups of people is showing grace, right? So we have no idea what people on the other end are dealing with. That goes for teachers as it relates to families and what they're going through, but also families considering the fact that while this person is your child's teacher, they also they're someone's mom or wife, daughter, and friend. And so there's a level of grace. But I think one of the things this all comes down to, if this has not been evident before, it's evident now, is the value of human connection and relationships. And so learning is a very social construct, very much like Dr. Carter spoke of. Many of our parents speak to the concern regarding their children having interactions with one another. So, it's very important that it's sensitive to the fact that there needs to be some time where it's not academically focused. There's got to be some downtime and some play. Play, particularly at the elementary level, is critical to human development. But we've got to show grace. We've got to identify what people are in need of, resources, but relationships. And if you didn't have that or didn't prioritize that in the past, it will show. If you have an administration or a teacher whose mindset isn't around, I teach people, right? I teach content to people. And so if we don't put people first, then that can make for a very combative relationship in times of trouble. But we really got to prioritize relationship, and we've got to show one another grace. That is something that I'm constantly speaking of. And I have to challenge myself, because Dr. Shepherd, I don't know if you're aware, but the same expectations are on teachers and administrators regarding achievement. Even in this environment where children do not have all of the resources, may not have a family member who knows how to access technology, may have internet issues, the expectation for growth and achievement has not been lifted. So right now we're preparing children to take the exact same assessments they would had they been able to come to school and sit in a classroom for 180 days.
That is key. And I'm going to reiterate that. I don't think I realized that. And I'm sure a lot of people out there did not know that the achievement standards have not changed. Woo, Dr. Carter.
So that when we talk about stress and expectations, it's not business as usual, and yet it is.
Wow. Dr. Carter, what do you think about that?
Gosh, well, I mean, systems have to have grace, not just people, because people run systems, right? And so that, but stuff falls. So if the top of the system doesn't have grace, at some point that is going to dwindle down to just the teacher and the student, or just the principal and the teacher, or just the superintendent and the school, right? There is a trickle down effect. And one of the things that I was thinking about as both of our school leaders were talking was the vantage point that I have, which is that both of my parents are trained teachers. My father was a music teacher for 40 years. My mother was a teacher and then a principal for 40 and a half years. The half is very important, according to her. 40 and a half years, she was the principal, and the last 20 of her career, she was a principal. I remember the long hours. I remember the efforts to go beyond the classroom, whether that was take money out of your own pocket, but also spend your time and your energy with a family or with a student who needs more support. And now what I'm seeing happening as I'm reflecting on what my parents did, the extent to which my parents went, I'm now reflecting on the fact that might have been in a classroom 2 or 3 students who really needed that extra love. And now you might have 12, 15 students who really need that extra love. But you can't fill up what you don't have. So where do the teachers get that extra support is one of my questions. And hopefully they have good support systems. What Principal Lewis said makes complete sense. If you didn't have strong social networks, and some cultures aren't built on strong collectivism. Other cultures are. But if you didn't have that strong collectivistic mindset, then this, I can imagine, would be an even tougher time for you.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm thankful for all the comments that we've had. Thank you, Chris Define, who works at Hope Health System, Angela Pinckney, Rodney Parker, Dr. Parker, Sharon, Linda Woods, Letitia is on, and just so many. But Lee Anthony Gibbs, who is also administrator, I believe, in Prince George's County, he asked this question, and I'm just going to pop it up, and this can do a nice segue for us. He said, what can your central office executives do to better assist you as a principal or a school-based administrator? So I don't know if you want to start with that, Principal South, if you want to kick that off.
Sure. Good evening, and salute to Brother Gibbs. I would say, as a central office administrator, we have what's called WIN, and it stands for what I need. One of the things that I have learned as a central office administrator is and even when I was a classroom teacher and as a building principal, is I love the Socratic method. I believe in asking questions because questions give people a non-threatening segue to tell you what they need. And so in order to better support the building level leaders, I want it to be a win-win situation, what I need and what you need. I think that there are only so many things that a building administrator or a teacher can get to in a virtual reality. And so we have to have consistent check-in routines that provide opportunities for conversation, not dictation, but conversation. On a daily or weekly basis, I have a routine of gently asking probing questions, such as what was the most stressful thing about your day? And if I find that was something related to something that central office can change or mitigate, that I make sure that I get that in that building. I ask them about their family, because again, as Principal Lewis said, you teach people, not subjects. Subjects are just a vehicle to get us to our destination, but you teach people. And as the teacher's teacher, and as the principal's teacher from a central office perspective, I think that the same thing we ask them to do with their teachers and students, we then have to do with them. It is reciprocal. And we have to make sure that that paradigm exists in a non-threatening environment. I have learned in this situation to make sure that I keep the lines of communication open. Let them be frustrated. Let them vent. Principal Lewis said it earlier. Give them an opportunity to really express how they're feeling. This is a pandemic. This is not the flu season. This is unprecedented in America. And again, as I stated earlier here, we have experienced, changes that are unparalleled with our staff, with them making sure that they have the resources that they need. And resources internet is important. Devices are important, but also making sure that they have time to talk to someone if necessary, that they have an opportunity to be with their children if their children are virtual learners, that they have an opportunity to get the support that they need from a psychiatric or mental health standpoint, and that there is no shame. That we took teachers who traditionally, and I'm sure Principal Lewis can really appreciate this, have been in brick and mortar all their careers. Some of them, the only thing they used the computer for was, putting in grades and answering email. That was it. That was the extent of their virtual, expertise. Earlier in my career, I was actually principal of a virtual school. So this was nothing really new for me. I was just able to transition it to my brick and mortar experience. So I was principal of a virtual middle school. And so knowing how to find those things that teachers need, really listening. We've been doing celebrations all week. Generally we wait till Teacher Appreciation Week, Staff Appreciation Week, principal. We find a reason to appreciate somebody every day of the week. Our teachers are in the building, even though they're teaching virtually. And so for some, that's a strain. But we try to be very flexible in that if you need a different start time or a different end time, and you're able to still service the needs of your students, then we're going to make sure that we manage relationships so that when the pandemic is over, we don't have an HR pandemic.
Gotcha. So let me ask this question. Principal Lewis, I want you to start this one out. Is the virtual classroom here to stay?
I think so. I want everyone to consider some things from a different perspective.
Okay.
So historically, people who look like the folks on this call, the system wasn't designed for, right? Therefore, it has not worked for everyone. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity. How can we reimagine school, right? This is a perfect time to make lemonade out of the lemons that we've been served. And I don't want to make light that this has been difficult. I have a lot of families who are struggling with virtual learning, but then I have some success stories as well. And so I really want us to think about, what we can do, take from traditional schooling, what we can take from this experience and make it better for all students. So the beloved snow day, I think, is a thing of the past. I don't, people have different opinions about that. Because again, we have learned now what students need in order to continue to have instruction. I suspect, having conversations with some of my friends in different parts of the country, year-round schooling may be something that's on the table as well, particularly as we start thinking about hybrid and bringing kids back into the building. That's one way to reduce the number of students. I think maybe like you, Administrator South said, in terms of start times, schooling at different times of the day, because I am noticing some of my babies who had some serious attendance issues. This works for them. Bright, gifted, can't get up at 7:15 and be in the seat at 7:15 in the morning. And so again, school, when you think about it, going back to what Dr. Carter said in terms of systems don't generally work for everyone. So how can we take the best of the situation, what has worked? There are schools who are doing a phenomenal job, high attendance rates, continued learning. How can we take some of that data, do some research around that, take what has worked traditionally and make the best of it? But the other thing is, from a budget perspective, I don't know about other districts and I don't want to go, tell my house business, but in terms of what has happened, but there are going to be considerable cuts moving forward. And so from a cost perspective, virtual learning is less expensive to run. Like, just let's be grown-ups about this. take our feelings off the table, but it is more cost effective. So with budgets being cut, less revenue generated by the state, federal government, loss of jobs, there may be some aspects of this that may be the way that we school moving forward.
Wow. So yeah, Dr. Carter, how do you feel as a parent hearing that answer?
Okay, so I have an answer to that, but Principal Lewis, I have to say the same is true for the health field. There is some cost effectiveness to doing telehealth. For some providers are saying, I'm closing my office doors. I'm just going to do this because I already have to pay for my house. So if I can work out of my house and I don't have to pay for office rent, gas and electric, office supplies, coffee for people, waters for people. Yeah, I mean, there's the list goes. I run an office. I own a mental health clinic. Dr. Shepherd is the medical director at a mental health clinic. There is an extensive cost that goes into running any business that services the public. The people come in and out of every day, cleaning, supplies, toilet paper, paper towels. So, I mean, you name it. There's an extensive cost to that. And I can tell you that for my business, I stopped the cleaning people. I stopped the toilet paper, the paper towels, the soap, the pens that sit on the desk that you take out of the cup, have a pen as you leave. All of that didn't have to be ordered. Even paper didn't have to be ordered as much because everybody was working from their own homes. So I do think there's a cost effectiveness that we really have to consider. In terms of the question about, what was your question? What was the original question, Dr. Shepherd? I got caught up in what you were saying.
I see. Is the virtual classroom here to stay?
Yeah. Gosh. I could go back and forth about it, about that. I can see certain aspects of it staying. This is actually some similar conversations that church communities are having. What can we do online and how do we reach people? There is definitely, my experience is only with the Black church, Black Baptist to be more specific. There is a certain element of church that requires people to be in the same space at the same time, right? But there are other elements that do not. And how do we, and there are elements that we miss when we require people to be in the same place at the same time, like the sick and the shut-in, right? So now during the pandemic, that has been a major blessing, is that now the sick and the shut-in can get access to our service at the same time as everybody else. Because our typical pattern was to record the service and then get them a recording of the service. But that's even after the fact. It might be days or weeks after the services happen live. So for the sick and shut-in members, for members who work the midnight shift, 12 to 8 a.m., and can't necessarily make it to the church building, but they can make it home and they can, sit and listen to the service, that's been huge. So I would say that I think there are parts of it that are here to stay. I'm a huge proponent of snow days. And I did think it seems like we won't necessarily have to have a snow day anymore because we now have a paradigm for people being able to work from home, or a snow week. I mean, you can remember the blizzards of 2010, we had a blizzard, 2014, 15, we had a blizzard, and school was closed for a week and everything was just shut down. And now we don't have that. One of the things that I did want to mention, though, is when we're talking about, my perspective as a parent, is that there is, there's nothing that we can really compare to the loss of 250,000 people. That is just unbelievable and heartbreaking. It's even more heartbreaking that some are brushing off that number because there are lots of measures that we could have put in place, some of which we tried to, that would have saved lives. With that being said, I have to represent the parents that I've talked to who have said, in some ways, the shutdown minus the deaths. So if you took those off the table, because that's awful, and we wouldn't trade this out for the deaths, but the shutdown has been a huge godsend for the rat race that families are stuck in. And I can speak to my family. I have my two oldest boys are now 11 and 9. And then I have a 2 and a 3-year-old. That 11 and 9-year-old were on 3 basketball teams. They were in 2 church groups. Yes, 2 church groups. They were in, and then that didn't include birthday parties that, everybody's got a birthday. You've got to go to everybody's birthday because they came to yours. And it got to be that every weekend there was just this huge schedule that we had to engage because of social pressure, because of your own expectations of yourself. Good moms make sure their kids are involved. They make sure their kids have sporting things to do so that they can manage how much they eat. Good moms connect with other moms who are at the basketball, all of it. And when the shutdown happened, there was this reprieve. It was like God put a pause button on everything, just hit pause, and everything sort of stopped. And that was very refreshing for many parents, just to say, we can restart, we can hit pause, we can regroup. And then one of the conversations that I've been having with many friends who are parents is, so what are we going to go back to? Because we're now sure we don't need to go back to 3 basketball teams and baseball and karate and making every birthday party and every usher's anniversary rehearsal and every children's choir rehearsal. And what are we picking? What are we picking here? Because there's important work to be done in the realm of self-care, teaching our children, you don't have to be busy. Busy people aren't better people. Your busyness can be meditation. It can be reflection time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So actually, that's a perfect segue to what we're going to talk about next. And thank you for those who have been commenting, and they're right in line with what you all have been saying. So what I want to now tackle is, what are the lessons that we have learned? And I'm thankful that we have spent time talking about the teachers, talking about the educators, because many times those are the forgotten heroes, and they are the frontline workers also. They may not be within healthcare, but they are frontline workers because they are educating our generation of today. All right. And they're going to make sure that our generation of today is being learned. So, what lessons have we learned from the spring into the fall of 2020? I want to start there. And what things do parents need to advocate for if they're noticing these lessons that you're talking about are not being followed through on? So hopefully my question is making sense. What lessons are we going to need to emphasize that we've learned? And how do we make sure that those lessons are being followed through on and emphasized within the families? Principal South, Administrator South.
So I would say, in response to your question, and I've enjoyed everything that's been said. When I look at what schools represent, the nucleus that schools are for families, for students, for parents, and then to have that nucleus removed is a huge paradigm shift. Today, students are at risk more for mental health challenges, social, emotional challenges more than any other generation. That was true before the start of the turbulent year, but it's really more evident, especially because of smartphones, the rise of social media, the growing dominance of the internet culture in our life. And students face a minefield of new and ongoing trauma-producing challenges. It's a minefield. It's an upheaval of the normalcy of their life caused by COVID-19, financial and social problems in the home because a parent has lost their job, and so being able to look at all of the multiplicity of factors related to deaths in the family, whereas they would come to school and we could send them to the counselor or the social worker or the psychiatrist or psychologist, we no longer have that luxury. And so as an individual that's deeply invested in the lives of children, really looking at what lessons did I learn, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have had, both as an individual and as an institutional leader, is that teaching and learning cannot be defined, refined, or confined to that building. Teaching and learning, and that means not just the subjects, but how I deliver instruction, whether that's life lessons or curriculum lessons, cannot be confined to that building. You asked earlier, was virtual learning here to stay? I think that the pandemic has proven we don't have a choice. When I look at it from an administrator's perspective, you're going to have kids that are suspended. No longer will they need to come get a packet or try to get caught up. Get on this virtual classroom and stay connected every day at home. When we talk about students that, and again, I have middle school and high school, when I'm dealing with expulsions where a student is suspended for 9 days, or 10 days or a long-term suspension, no longer is it, well, you got to come up on, these specific days to get your makeup work. There's no need for learning to stop. So I've looked at how do I build bridges instead of barriers through this pandemic? Which of these things can be tools to help me build a better experience for individuals where the traditional school setting is not conducive for them? Dr. Carter talked about, how churches have had to make the transition. And I think that what it's causing us to do is to look at breaking out of our schemata and really looking at how do we use these experiences to bridge gaps. Principal Lewis said earlier, and I found it comical. I'm trying to figure out where's this second grader working at that he can't get up and be to school at 7:15. But it's true because the same thing has happened in middle school and high school. And so I think that what I've learned more than anything else is that teaching and learning cannot be defined, relegated, or confined to the building. That all bets are off, all barriers are off. Everything has to come into play in order to keep these kids connected. The last thing I want to say to that is this. One of the things that has weighed on my heart and in my spirit is students who are held hostage at home. Because home is not a wonderful place for every child. And I'm deeply moved and concerned and impacted when I know a student is at home with a abusive parent, or they're in an environment where alcoholism or drug use is prevalent and is the norm. I'm touched by what I know they're dealing with. And so we have set up virtual interventions. And I had you mention that in the chat. Thank you. We have virtual interventions where we're training our staff on what things to look for in a virtual setting because they're not sitting in the classroom with you. And then how to execute those virtual interventions. We're still delivering, kids can still come up to the school and get fed. They can still come get uniforms. We have a washer and a dryer, so you can still come and do your laundry, drop it off. We have people that will volunteer to do it and then get it back to them. So all of these are things that I've learned from the spring to the fall, that the building services so much more than just math, science, English, and social studies.
Wow. Principal Lewis, just chime in. What lessons have you learned?
So many. So I going back to what Administrator South said, I think on a personal level, in terms of leadership and supporting people, as well as from an instructional leader perspective. So one of the things is this has exposed flaws. And I'm speaking to my school specifically, right? I'm the leader, so I'm going to be transparent. Some flaws in our thinking, our flaws operationally, and some flaws in our systems and structures as they existed in the spring. One of the things that we did do, though, we were honest about what those flaws were. I believe in, let's call a thing, right? We cannot address it if we don't acknowledge it. So we were really purposeful in getting parents to share with us the things that they were disappointed in, the things they wanted us to know, the things that they wanted us to do better in. And so one of the things that we did was instituted a parent advisory group. And so that particular group literally advises us. So this is something that we're considering. This is something that we're thinking about. Give us the pros and cons. What would you like to see? How would this be helpful, or would it be helpful? And so what happens is, you can help people And you can do things that you think are helping people and they don't. And so we wanted to address the need. So we recognized that technology was an area that our parents struggled with. So we had to create videos in more than one language so that our parents could access information, one-on-one sessions, even in COVID, because we needed to do that so kids could access. When you're talking about cognitively impaired students or children who are 4 years old, they cannot navigate school without an adult or responsible teen or family member. Working with grandparents, they are the secret heroes. Like they're the rock stars right now, grandmas and grandpas. And so, but really supporting them. We also have done things like instituted a virtual hub where parents can go one place from our website and click on anything and be exactly where they need to be. So you don't have to navigate 55 different places in order to get what you need. We also looked at how we were communicating with families and made shifts so that we could look at systems that allow for translation. We have dozens of languages spoken amongst the students in our school. And so just translating it to Spanish did not cut it. We have students who speak Urdu and French and you name it. And so we looked at the systems that we use to communicate. And then we also looked at, okay, we're connecting, but are we connecting? Like, so what does a community of care and concern look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? So there was training amongst our staff members, our teachers, what did that look like? And then going back to some good old, this is what we think about people who don't engage. But that's a bias of ours. And so some of that's got to erode too, to be able to be what we need to be and who we need to be for our students. So what are our biases around kids who don't come to school and kids or families who don't feel like prioritize education? Like, what are our mindsets and how are we hindering our efforts to engage families? So I've learned a lot around how important connection is as a leader, but also sharing those lessons with the staff and really making sure that we are a beacon of hope, that we are a epicenter within the community, that we are able to meet needs beyond teaching and learning and teach lifelong lessons. So I've learned a lot. You probably didn't bargain for all of that.
That's
but
good.
But the learning has been, it's going to change my practice forever. And I like to think that it will change the practice of the educators in my purview, and even change how families engage. So all for the benefit of my sweet pumpkins, right? So it's worth it all.
Mama 4, what lessons have you learned?
So one of them is that our children are resilient. I knew that. This reinforced that children will adjust. Even those who have special needs, they will adjust in their way. It might not be a full adjustment, but they will adjust in their way. And I also learned that the grace is having grace with people who are in your life, no matter who they are, whether, they're providing a service to you because they're teaching your children. And so they need your respect and your support and your collaboration as a parent. I knew that. I saw that growing up with the parents that I had, but it feels different when you're observing something than when you're in it. So, checking in on the teacher, how are you doing? The other thing I learned that was a pretty important lesson was that, being highly communicative about where your end point is, like where your boundary is. I can remember one day last spring, it was probably April, and I had patients back to back, and one of my kids is saying, I need help with math. He can't find one of the worksheets, and he's got worksheets in different piles behind me. at, English language arts and math and science and social studies and handwriting and penmanship. And I counted the worksheets, and it was 35 worksheets for a week of learning. And I said, and I'm looking at him thinking, not to sound funny, I don't have time for this. I have to work today. And so I emailed the principal and I said, I'm really sorry. I can't mom this way. And mom being the verb, I cannot mom this way. And I can't practice this way as a psychologist. So here's what I need. We're going to get this stuff in. It's not coming on Friday because tomorrow is Friday. And I don't have the bandwidth for all of this. And yet I want to make sure that he gets what he needs out of learning. So I don't want to rush him, and I don't want him to feel under pressure to learn. I want him to be as close to the real classroom as possible. And he responded and said, no problem. I'll let your teachers know. And it was just like this sigh of relief that I experienced, and we got everything in, but things were a few days late because we also had 2 other children that were here. I also felt the grace of teachers. I remember one of my kids' teachers asking, if when she got the message that things are going to be late, she said, I can keep him on and we can do some of this work together. And she was saying after school. And I thought about how gracious that was and how much I appreciated it. And then at the same time, I appreciated that as an academician, as a professor, as a person, as a professional. And at the same time, when I switched to my mom hat, I say, thank you, but no thank you, because I need this kid to help with the 2 toddlers. So keeping him after school means that then I'm listening to toddlers who just need a snack. A 9-year-old can get a 2-year-old a snack, right? Or just needs to be entertained, play some card game with the kid. So there were all kinds of nuances that, we just had to keep dealing with. I think last spring was harder than this fall because it seemed like we were waiting for the next shoe to drop. We dosed out how long school was going to be out. So it was until April, and then it was until May. And it was like, I know that kept people at this heightened state of anxiety. Like, do I have to prepare for them to go back? And so this year I was relieved to hear the superintendent say, January 2021, that's what we're doing. That's where we are. That's our boundary. We're going to reassess as the semester goes forward. But right now, January 2021 is what we're thinking about. And that meant that we could get settled for 4 months. We could be settled what we were doing. I think this semester was quite easier for a lot of parents because they knew what to expect. There was less adjustment that had to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you were going to say something, Administrator South, earlier. I want you to get it in before
she
we
was
close
so
out.
good. I forgot what I was going to say. No, I wanted to lift up. I saw a comment in the chat by one of the participants who said their kindergartner has to navigate so many apps. And so, of course, I'm always, parents are our partners. And so in looking at that comment and then reflecting on what Dr. Carter said, again, from a parental perspective, I'm going to say this, that this virtual reality, and I'm sure Principal Lewis will appreciate this, has given us an opportunity to have some courageous conversations with parents, that the jewel that you thought they always were, now you get to see the other side of them for the other 7 or 8 hours a day. And I have to, remind my teachers, exercise some grace and some tact, and remember that parent loves that child, exactly as they are. But it also, and I made a very bold statement a couple of weeks ago. I was challenged by some parents who said, it's just too much. It's just too much. And I said that same brain that your student uses to sit on Xbox and PS5 and, all of these games for 7 or 8 hours, that's that same brain that they need to use for this schoolwork. Now we need to package it so that it's appealing and engaging, but I think the comment lends itself to courageous conversations from parents to say to teachers and building leaders, you need to centralize how you deliver information. We have to have conversations. No, Sixth grade can't use Zoom, and seventh grade uses WebEx, and eighth grade is using, a totally different GoToMeeting. No, if it's middle school, this is the platform, and this is what everybody is going to use. And, the pandemic has caused us, in the spirit of the pandemic, to be able to lay aside some of our individual freedoms for the better good of the institution. Whether it's, if you're in the building, you have to wear a mask. Well, I'm in a classroom by myself, or if you leave that office or classroom, I need to see a mask on. And it's really taught us a new sense of community, about being safe for and with each other, about prioritizing the needs of others, and being able to really listen to parents. And I think, as Dr. Carter said, it's really helped parents to understand what teachers are up against. It's one of the most underpaid, underprivileged, underappreciated professions in our country. But I think this pandemic has really shined a spotlight on the tremendous service. So again, this is my personal tribute to every teacher. The tremendous contribution that educators make in the lives of every family and every community that we service.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to tell you, Principal South, that I had this conversation with my oldest son last semester. He forgot to do something, his homework. And I said, how did you forget? This is your response. This is your job. Your job is to go to school. And he said, I just didn't remember. And I said, oh, okay. Where did Stephen Curry go to school? And he said, Davidson. And what's his number? And he answered that. And I said, how many points did he have last night? And he said, oh, he had this. Oh, okay. So it looks like your memory is working just fine, son. It seems like you haven't prioritized your schoolwork. So yes, and I know my kids very well. So I know what the teachers were dealing with. And with that son in particular, it's just inattentiveness, just paying attention to things that are more important to him than other things. But yes, I completely agree. The same mind that can manage all these fingers can move at the same time. That same brain can certainly get done their schoolwork. Absolutely.
Principal Lewis, I'm going to give you the last word here. Anything that you may want to just say as encouragement to parents or even to educators? Come on, give us the last words here before we do this.
Absolutely. So the thing becomes, to Dr. Carter's point, our children are resilient. They really will require us to have an expectation of them as it relates to this work, like they always have. And I feel like our attitudes, our behaviors around learning, be that virtual, be that in person, really does impact how they receive this. As parents, you're the first teacher, right? And so, be that wonderful of an experience or be that not. We've got to prioritize education, because the thing is, when this is all over, our children will still have to work, they'll have to compete, they'll have to move on. And so we as a community have to prioritize learning, but learning does not have to mean sitting quietly and still under a desk, right? There's learning taking place all the time. So our attitudes around learning have to shift, to pivot. That's the new word. They have to pivot. How we deliver instruction will have to pivot, right? We're asking students to do different things in a different way. And then how we support that work is going to pivot as well. So I think this could be, if we embrace it as such, could be the start of a new way of teaching and learning. And I'm personally excited about that, because I want to be a part of that work.
That's good. Wow. Thank you. That's excellent. Excellent. Well, you have tuned in to another broadcast of Ask the Doctors. And yes, they may not be medical doctors, but they're Dr. Mom right below me. Dr. Lewis. All right. That's right. Soon to be. She didn't mention that. She's up to get, are you getting your ED or are you getting your PhD?
Yeah.
ED. Yeah.
Practitioner at the heart. I'm a practitioner.
Absolutely.
Love the schoolhouse.
Absolutely. So welcome. Well, please let us know when you graduate, because you'll be back. These three people right here will be back. We will do a follow-up to this. I guarantee it. We'll give a couple months, but we will bring them back just to see how things are moving. And then thank you, Administrator South. It is always good to see Black men representing excellence in education. And you have done
We need
that.
Black men. So if there are any listening looking to get into education, drop your name in the chat. We have tremendous resources. Again, I'm always recruiting, so absolutely. We need to see us in classrooms.
Absolutely. We need to see us in all fields, all areas. And, my mantra right now has been making sure that we see Black people who are emphasizing the need for vaccines and to participate in the vaccine trials. So if we're going to get over this pandemic, we have to have people who look like us, letting people know in our community that it's okay to get the vaccine. It just will not happen. I'm letting you know that right now. If you don't see a face that looks like us, and I keep saying it on whatever platform I'm on, because I want people to really hear that, because it just won't happen. There's too much distrust out there. But let me just say this. I am so thankful to have Administrator South working with our students. I'm thankful that we have a Principal Lewis, soon to be Dr. Lewis, who's working with our elementary school students. I'm thankful for Dr. Carter, who's raising up young boys and young men and a young lady, and who is making sure that our next generation is strong. And so this show today, if anything, should have encouraged you. I entitled it the performance review. And with all performance reviews, there's some good and there's some bad. And so we see the things that we need to improve on. You've heard the tips. And I just want, as we close out, Administrator South, I should have done this earlier. I just want you all to give your contact information to where people can reach out to you if they choose to do so. Again, people go back and view this. We get so many views, not during a live session. We get definitely more views after the live show. So I just want you all to know that. So people will reach out to you and just let us know where they can do that.
Absolutely. So I just shared my email information in our private chat if you want to make that public. Absolutely. I can be reached at nicholas.south@hwschools.org. And so I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you, to share resources, information, mentorship, and partnership as we move forward through the pandemic, and just making sure that we provide a quality, well-rounded educational experience for everyone. So I appreciate it very, very much. And go EDD, 3 more classes myself.
Oh, wow. Man.
Congratulations.
All this smartness.
We got a first female Black president and these beautiful Black ladies. I'm so privileged to be with you all tonight.
Bless you. I left my information in the chat as well, Dr. Shepherd.
Yes.
I definitely will. I love working with people. I love partnering with folks. This work is not done in isolation really well. So I like sharing ideas, but I also like getting ideas from others. So if you have great ideas or things for me to consider with my wonderful population, please share that. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to support you as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Carter?
Yes, as Dr. Shepherd mentioned at the beginning of our time together, I am the owner of the Institute for Healing, which is an outpatient mental health facility based in Owings Mills, but we now cover the entire Maryland area because we are doing 100% telehealth. So you can feel free to reach out to the office if you have questions. So one of the clinicians will be able to get back to you to answer those questions. Our phone number is 410-864-0211. You can also visit us at our website, www.myiheal.com, myiheal.com, or you can email us at info@myiheal.com.
All right. Our guests, please hang tight. I'm just going to close this out here. So Hope Health Systems, direct care services in the DMV area, and really now abroad, as Dr. Carter was saying. But if you're in need of direct care services, please hit us up. As I say each week, we'll do you some good. And so come on over. I'm Chief Medical Director, but I'm proud to serve all communities in their need and quest for mental health care, for quality mental health care. So you can look us up, hopehealthsystems.com or 410-265-8737. This has been excellent. Man, we could go a little bit longer, but I will not do that to you all. I want to let you all enjoy your weekend. And then speaking of that, please adhere to what I was saying earlier. These are not times to be out just, kicking it. And, I know your family wants to see you and you want to make sure that you're seen by your family. But let's be safe. All right. Please wear your mask. Please wash your hands. Please watch your distance. Be careful as you're going out. Avoid large gatherings because the coronavirus is surging, is real, and will affect your body and mentally too, truthfully, physically and mentally. So I just want to say that. I say that very nice and slowly because I want to see us get to our 1-year anniversary, which would be in March, because you were able to not be weary and continue to be vigilant and keeping safe. All right. Enough of that for today. We're signing off. Thank you all again. Thank you. This is wonderful. I appreciate the time that you have spent. Have a wonderful weekend. All right.